Subsurface drainage plays an important part in agriculture. It really helps to get producers out in the field earlier and really helps a lot with increasing productivity. But sometimes those drains can carry excess nutrients that goes along, and they work their way in through the rivers and streams into our nearby lakes. And in our case, in Lake Erie, Western Lake Erie Basin, that has caused some significant problems with harmful algal blooms. And sometimes that's related to excess nutrients that's come through those drainage systems. So we've been looking at some alternative methods to managing subsurface drain nutrient loss. And one of those that we have is a two-stage wetland treatment. And the first stage is floating vegetated mats that we have, and that takes nutrients that are leaving the tile drains, and then through those vegetated plants, they absorb nutrients. And then we take those plants and we harvest the tops of those out in the fall. The bottoms have a root structure that have been set up really nice to be able to absorb nutrients, and it acts almost like a flocculant and grabs excess sediment that's in that water and settles it out to the bottom. Our second stage goes on to another pond before it leaves the system, and in that stage we have basically filtration methods that we use to absorb the phosphorus out of the water solution. So we're testing a number of different things out here. So one of the things that we're trying to test is how small can we make these wetland treatment systems. Typically they're maybe 1 to 3% of the treatment area. So if you have a 10-acre field, we're looking at 1% of a pond size to treat that area. We are trying to do much smaller than that, so we have about 1/3% that we're using, so we're trying to go as small as we can and still make that effective. So we're looking at different ways that we can take less of a footprint up for farmers to put in practices like this. We also want to test to see if the removal of phosphorus on these systems is more cost effective than typical best management practices that get funding year after year after year to put in. So the long-term effectiveness of these types of systems at removing phosphorus may be more cost effective. So that's another thing we want to test, over a 5, 10, 15-year period.
We wanted plants that grew well hydroponically, had good root systems, were able to be very resilient because we had fluctuating water levels, we had conditions of drought, and there were harsh winters as well. So we wanted to make sure that the plants would do well the following growing season. We selected 4 different plants.
And we measured the weight of those and then digest those to see how much phosphorus they begin with, and then at the end of the season here we'll see how much phosphorus they've removed from the system. And we want to see which of those are performing better, and then we'll add additional mats out here and more of those types of plants. And we'll continue to test those for a couple years.
3 of the 4 plants did very well in their growth, in removing nutrients from the water, and what we wanted to do is make sure that these plants were good at removing nutrients, particularly phosphorus and nitrogen. And you can see the root growth here in this picture here. 3 of the 4, again, did very well in their growth, growing anywhere from 5 times to 38 times their initial biomass. There was more phosphorus in the roots than in the shoots, but the phosphorus concentrations were about anywhere from 1.5 to 5 times the initial control concentrations. We've been monitoring the amount of flow and the phosphorus concentration, so the phosphorus load from coming in from the tile drain to going out of the first wetland. And in this first season, we found approximately a 63% reduction in total phosphorus from that entering the wetland to leaving the wetland.
Well, I think everybody needs to keep in the back of their mind this Lake Erie thing, or maybe on the forefront of their mind, this Lake Erie business that's going on, and what your contribution is to that problem. Whether you like it or not, we're all contributing some. And what can you do to help alleviate that issue down there? Because I am pretty certain that if we cannot get a handle on this through the steps we're taking now and get more people involved with these voluntary or even some cost share projects that are going on, we're going to be regulated. and regulation is not too far away, I'm afraid, and unless we jump on board, you better get ready, because that's what's going to come.
Overall, we've seen so far really good results with this. We've had about 60% reduction in what comes into the pond and what leaves the pond. We're still in the early stages of this research, but so far we've been really happy with what we've seen. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about our project and what we're doing, please contact us and we'd be happy to share with you what we've been finding.